Bandolero set, Texas, 1968. James Stewart stood in the dust watching Dean Martin rehearse a horse riding scene. Stewart was 60 years old, a legend. He'd made 80 films, won an Oscar, defined the Western genre alongside John Wayne and Gary Cooper. He knew cowboys, real ones and fake ones. And Dean Martin, in his opinion, was fake, a singer pretending to be a cowboy. Stewart turned to the director, Andrew McLaglen. "This isn't going to work." "Why not?" "Because singers don't make cowboys, they make noise." McLaglen was caught between two stars. Stewart was the veteran, the authority. Dean was the draw, the name that sold tickets. But Stewart had a point. Dean had never done a real Western before. Never ridden horses for weeks in the Texas heat. Never done his own stunts. Never proved he could handle the physical demands of the genre. "This is a mistake," Stewart said again and walked to his trailer. What happened over the next 3 weeks would force James Stewart to eat his words and teach him something about Dean Martin that would change his entire perspective. Not just about Dean. About what it means to be a professional. March 1968, Hollywood was changing. The old guard was fading. Stewart, Wayne, Henry Fonda, they represented a dying era. Method acting was in. The new generation, Brando, Dean, Pacino, they approached the craft differently, less rigid, more instinctive. Stewart didn't understand it, didn't trust it. He believed in preparation, discipline, showing up on time, knowing your lines, doing the work. Dean Martin represented everything Stewart didn't respect. A nightclub singer who'd stumbled into movies. A man who made it look easy, who joked through takes, who showed up late and left early. Who in Stewart's view didn't take acting seriously. Bandolero was a Western, the story of two outlaw brothers played by Stewart and Dean who rob a bank and take a widow hostage. Played by Raquel Welch. It required horseback riding, gunfights, physical stunts, the kind of work that separated real actors from pretenders. Stewart had agreed to do the film because he loved Westerns. It was his genre, his comfort zone. When he heard Dean Martin was cast as his brother, Stewart almost walked away. "A singer in my Western, but the studio insisted Dean Martin sells tickets." Stewart reluctantly agreed, but he arrived on set with a chip on his shoulder. Day 1, location shooting in Brackettville, Texas, middle of nowhere. Hot, dusty, brutal conditions. Stewart arrived at 5 a.m. in full costume. Makeup done, lines memorized, ready to work. Dean arrived at 7:30 a.m. hair perfect, tan perfect, holding a coffee cup, joking with the crew about something that happened in Vegas. Stewart watched from across the set, noticed the lateness, the casualness, the lack of urgency. McLaglen called everyone together. "Let's run through the opening scene." Stewart and Dean on horseback, escaping after the bank robbery. Simple. Blocking just established the relationship between the brothers. They mounted their horses. Stewart's movements were precise, practiced. He'd been riding horses in films since the 1940s. Dean looked comfortable but less experienced. Not bad, just newer. They ran the scene. Stewart hit every mark perfectly. Dean missed one. Stopped. "Sorry. Let's go again." Stewart said nothing. Just turned his horse around, ready to repeat. They ran it again. Dean got it right this time. But Stewart noticed something. Dean was smiling. Like this was fun, like he wasn't taking it seriously enough. McLaglen called. "Cut. That's great, guys. We'll set up for coverage." Stewart dismounted, walked past Dean without acknowledgement. Dean Noticed, didn't say anything, just that half smile he did when someone was cold to him. The pattern continued every day. Stewart arrived early, prepared, serious. Dean arrived later, relaxed, friendly. With everyone except Stewart, who gave him nothing to work with. By day 3, the crew noticed James Stewart and Dean Martin weren't speaking off camera. On camera, they were professionals. The scenes worked. The chemistry was there. But between takes, Stewart would walk away. No small talk, no bonding, just distance. Raquel Welch asked Dean about it during lunch. Is there a problem with Jimmy? Dean shrugged. He doesn't like me. Why? Dean lit a cigarette. Because I'm not what he thinks an actor should be. What does he think you are? A singer who wandered onto a movie set by accident. Raquel frowned. But you've made 50 films. Dean smiled. Doesn't matter. He sees what he wants to see. Raquel glanced over at Stewart eating alone. Are you going to prove him wrong? Dean breathed out smoke. I'm just going to do my job, that's all. Week 2 brought the difficult scenes, a sequence where Stewart and Dean's characters fight. Physical, intense, choreographed, but still dangerous. The stunt coordinator, a man named Jack Williams, walked them through it. You'll start here. Jimmy throws the first punch. Dean, you duck. Come back with a body shot. Jimmy catches you, throws you against the wall. Dean gets up, charges Jimmy. You both go down, roll, end with Dean on top, Jimmy pushing him off. It's aggressive. Make it look real, but be careful. Stewart listened. Nodded. Professional. Dean listened too. Asked a few questions, then they tried it. First take. Stewart threw the punch. Dean ducked. Perfect timing. Came back with the body shot. Stewart sold it. Grabbed Dean. Threw him against the wall, but Dean hit it harder than expected. Winced. Kept going. Charged Stewart. They both went down, rolled. Dean ended up on top, but Stewart saw something. Dean had hit that wall hard. Hard enough to hurt, but didn't stop. Didn't call cut. Just finished the scene. McLaglen called cut. That's good. Let's do one more for safety. Dean stood up. Stewart saw him touch his shoulder just briefly, then drop his hand like he didn't want anyone to notice. They did another take. Then another. Each time Dean hit that wall. Each time he finished the scene without complaint. After the 4th take, McLaglen was happy. That's a wrap on this setup. Dean walked off set. Stewart watched him go. Noticed the slight stiffness in his movement. That night, Stewart couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about that wall, about Dean. Hitting it 4 times, never complaining, never asking for a pad. Never suggesting they use a stunt double. Stewart had worked with plenty of actors who would have stopped after the first take, who would have demanded adjustments. Dean just did it over and over. Stewart realized something. Maybe Dean wasn't as soft as he looked. Week 3, the canyon sequence. The most dangerous scene in the film. Stewart and Dean on horseback, racing through narrow, rocky passages. Fast. Real horses. Real terrain. Real danger. The stunt coordinator briefed them. This is tricky. The path is narrow, lots of rocks. The horses will be spooked by the noise in the tight space. We have doubles ready if you want them. Stewart looked at Jack. I'll do it myself. Jack nodded. Expected that. Turned to Dean. Dean looked at the canyon. Studied it. Then I'll do it. Jack frowned. Dean, no offense, but you don't have the experience Jimmy has. If something goes wrong, I'll do it. Dean repeated calm. Certain. Stewart watched this surprised. Most actors would have taken the out. Let the professional stuntman handle the risk. Dean wasn't backing down. They mounted their horses. Stewart on a brown stallion he'd been riding for 2 weeks. Dean on a gray mare that seemed skittish. Jack gave final instructions. Stay close together. Don't let horses get too far ahead. If something feels wrong, pull back. We can always reset. Stewart nodded. Ready. Dean nodded. Ready. McLaglen called action. They took off fast. Hooves pounding dirt. The canyon walls closed in, narrow, claustrophobic. Stewart was in his element. He'd done this 100 times. Knew how to guide the horse, how to stay balanced, how to look natural while being completely in control. Dean was behind him, keeping pace, handling the mare better than Stewart expected. The path curved, sharp right. Stewart leaned, made it through. Dean followed, but his horse stumbled just slightly on loose rocks. Dean didn't panic, just corrected, pulled the reins, steadied her, kept going. Stewart glanced back. Saw Dean's hands firm, confident. Not the hands of someone faking it, the hands of someone who knew what he was doing. They reached the end of the canyon. McLaglen called cut. Both actors slowed their horses, turned back. Stewart dismounted, looked at Dean. You okay? Dean dismounted, breathing hard. Yeah, that was intense. Stewart nodded. You handled that stumble well. Dean shrugged. The horse did the work. I just held on. But Stewart knew that wasn't true. When a horse stumbles at that speed in that terrain, most riders panic, pull too hard, make it worse. Dean stayed calm, made the right adjustment, saved himself and the horse. That required skill and experience more than Stewart had given him credit for. That evening, Stewart found Jack Williams near the equipment trucks. Jack, how much riding experience does Dean have? Jack looked up. Dean, more than you'd think. Why? Stewart crossed his arms. Just curious. Jack smiled. Dean's been riding since he was a kid. Grew up in Ohio. His dad kept horses. Dean spent summers working on farms, riding, handling animals. He doesn't talk about it, but he knows his way around a horse. Stewart processed this, so he's not faking it. Jack laughed. Dean doesn't fake anything. He just doesn't advertise what he knows. Prefers people to underestimate him. Makes life easier. Stewart walked back to his trailer, thinking. Final week of filming. The relationship between Stewart and Dean had shifted. Not dramatically. Stewart still didn't seek out Dean's company, but the coldness had thawed slightly. He'd nod when Dean arrived. Say good morning. Small things. Dean noticed, but didn't make a big deal of it. The last major scene was scheduled for Friday. Stewart and Dean's characters, after all the running and violence, have a moment of honesty, sitting by a campfire, talking about their lives, their choices, why they became outlaws. It was dialogue-heavy, emotional, required vulnerability from both actors. Stewart was comfortable with this. This was his strength, emotional truth. Dean was less certain. He'd been fine with the action scenes, the physical stuff, but this required something different. Stillness, openness. They rehearsed the scene in the morning. Stewart delivered his lines perfectly. Decades of experience in every word. Dean listened. Really listened. Not performing listening. Actually hearing what Stewart was saying. Then delivered his response. It was good. Not perfect, but honest. McLaglen was pleased. Let's shoot it after lunch. They broke. Stewart went to his trailer. Dean stayed on set pacing, reading his lines. Jack Williams watched him. You nervous? Dean nodded. Yeah, this scene's different. It's all internal. Can't hide behind a horse or a gun. Jack smiled. You'll be fine. Just trust your instincts. Dean looked at him. Stewart's so good at this. I don't want to disappoint. Jack put a hand on Dean's shoulder. You won't. They called everyone back to set. The campfire was lit. Real fire, real heat, real smoke. It added authenticity. Stewart and Dean took their positions, sitting across from each other, the fire between them. McLaglen reviewed the scene one more time, then called action. Stewart started his character talking about their childhood, their father who was hard on them, the poverty, the choices that led them here. Stewart's voice was quiet, raw, vulnerable. Dean listened, his face reflecting everything. Pain, recognition, empathy, not performed, just present. Then Dean's turn. His character responding, talking about regret, about wanting to be better, but not knowing how. Dean's voice cracked. Slightly. Not a planned crack, a real one, something breaking through. Stewart heard it, saw it in Dean's eyes. This wasn't acting anymore. This was Dean. The real Dean, the one who'd been hiding behind the jokes and the casual attitude. McLaglen let the scene play out. Didn't call cut. Just let them work. When it ended, both actors sat there, still in character, still in the moment. Finally, McLaglen spoke. Cut. That's it. That's the one. The crew was silent. They'd witnessed something rare. Two actors connecting. Not performing. Connection. Actually connecting. Stewart stood up. Dean stood up. They looked at each other. Stewart extended his hand. That was excellent work. Dean shook it. Thank you. Stewart didn't let go. Immediately. I owe you an apology. For what? For how I treated you, for what I thought about you. Dean smiled. It's okay. No, Stewart insisted. It's not okay. I judged you before I knew you. I assumed because you came from music, you weren't serious about this. I was wrong. Dean was quiet for a moment. Then I am serious about it. I just don't show it the same way you do. Stewart nodded. I see that now, and I respect it. They rapped Bandolero 2 days later. Rap party at a local restaurant. Stewart found Dean near the bar. Can I ask you something? Dean turned. Sure. Why do you do it this way? Do what? Act like you don't care. Show up late? Joke around. When clearly you care a great deal. Dean considered the question, took a drink. Then because if people know you care, they can hurt you. If they think it's just a job, just a paycheck, they can't touch you. But it's not just a job for you. No, it's everything. But I learned a long time ago not to show that. People use it against you. Stewart understood. He'd seen it happen. The industry could be cruel, especially to people who cared too much. That's why you let me think you were careless. Dean nodded. And that's why you proved you weren't. Stewart smiled. On purpose? Dean smiled back. Maybe. I wanted to see if the great James Stewart could be wrong about something. Stewart laughed. First real laugh he'd shared with Dean. I can be wrong. And I was about you. Dean raised his glass to being wrong. Stewart raised his to learning better. They drank. Two men from different worlds, different generations, different approaches, but the same commitment. Underneath. The same dedication to the craft. The same understanding that great work requires sacrifice even when nobody notices. Bandolero premiered in June 1968. Critics praised the chemistry between Stewart and Dean, called them believable as brothers despite their differences. The public loved it. The film made money. But the real success happened off camera in a Texas desert, when a legend learned that talent doesn't always look the way you expect. And a singer proved that cowboys aren't born. They're made by work, by commitment, by showing up every day and doing the job, even when nobody believes you can. Years later, in a 1978 interview, Stewart was asked about his favorite co-stars. He mentioned many names, then paused. You know who surprised me? Dean Martin. The interviewer was curious. How so? Stewart smiled. I thought he was just a nightclub act. Turned out he was one of the best professionals I ever worked with. He did his own stunts, never complained, showed up even when he was hurt, and he taught me something important. The interviewer leaned forward. What? That the way someone arrives doesn't determine the work they do. Dean would show up late cracking jokes and I judged him, but when the cameras rolled, he delivered every time. Not flashy, not showy, just solid, honest work. That's rare. I'm glad I learned to see past my prejudice. Otherwise, I would have missed working with a genuine talent. Dean never knew Stewart said that. He died in 1995. Stewart died in 1997. But the people who worked with both of them remember the tension that became respect. Remember the judgment that became admiration. Remember two men who taught each other that there's more than one way to be great. If this story about earning respect moved you, subscribe and hit that thumbs up. Share with someone who's ever been underestimated. Have you ever proven someone wrong about you? Let us know in the comments. Ring that notification bell for more untold stories about Dean Martin's legacy.